So you're a homeowner in Florida and you're dreaming about that amazing screen enclosure, a real game changer for enjoying the outdoors, right? But hold on. Before you can even think about relaxing in that bug-free paradise, there's this one giant hurdle, your HOA. So does their approval process affect your project? Oh, you bet it does. The real question is, how? And today we're going to break down the two completely separate paths you have to walk to get that project approved.
All right, let's get right into it. Getting your enclosure approved really comes down to two totally separate things. You've got your HOA's rules, and then you've got your city's rules. It's kind of like this. Think of your HOA as the style police. All they really care about is how it looks, the design, the color, the vibe. But then you've got the city, and they're the safety inspector. They couldn't care less about the color. They're all about safety, zoning rules, and permits. And here's the kicker, and this is super important. You can get a perfect score from one and totally fail the other. You have to pass both tests, no exceptions.
So let's talk about that first hurdle, passing the HOA's style test. This part is 100% about looks. Your HOA's #1 job here is just to make sure your awesome new enclosure fits in and doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, you know? They want to keep that consistent look for the whole neighborhood. Okay, so what are they looking for? Well, first off, the design itself has to match your home's architectural style. Makes sense, right? And then there's color. Your HOA is going to have a list of approved colors. You'll usually see the standards like white, black, bronze, that kind of thing. But hey, here's a little pro tip for you. If none of those are quite right, a lot of HOAs will actually let you use custom RAL colors to get that perfect match. And one more really important thing. If you live in a historical district, whoa, the rules get way stricter. They're trying to preserve that special character, so be prepared for that. And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Look at the image on the left. See how that design just works? The color, the style, it all flows perfectly with the house. That's what you're aiming for. Now look at the one on the right. Yikes. That's the kind of thing that gets you a big fat no in the mail. A clashing design like that is probably the #1 reason projects get shot down by the HOA. And honestly, it's so easy to avoid. All right, so let's say you've passed the HOA style test. Awesome, but you're not done yet. Now we move on to that second pillar, meeting the city's code. This is a whole different ballgame. We're not talking about opinions on aesthetics anymore. We're talking about black and white rules for safety, for zoning, and for getting the right permits. When it comes to the city, there are 3 big tripwires that can stop your project dead in its tracks. First, messing up the setbacks. Second, and this is a big one, not having a proper permitted foundation. And third, not paying attention to the rules about protecting trees. Let's break each of these down. So what in the world are setbacks? Just think of them as an invisible fence around your property. It's a rule from your city or county that says exactly how far your new enclosure has to be from your property lines, or even from a seawall if you're on the water. If you try to build inside that invisible fence, your permit is going to get rejected. Guaranteed. Okay, next up is the foundation. And I need to be crystal clear about this because there is absolutely no wiggle room. Building on dirt or on a concrete slab that wasn't permitted, that's an automatic failure when the inspector shows up. End of story. You just can't put a permanent structure on a shaky base. It's a huge safety risk, and it's the fastest way to get a big red stop work order slapped on your project. So how do you do it the right way? Well, it looks like this. Step 1, you've got to dig a proper footer. That's basically a trench filled with reinforced concrete that goes around the edge. Step 2, you pour a properly permitted concrete slab inside that footer. And step 3, now you've got a solid, legal base that's ready for your enclosure. Trying to cut corners here is just asking for a very expensive headache. And last but not least, don't forget about the trees. You know, here in Florida, we love our nature, and there are some pretty strict rules to protect it. A lot of the time, if your project is going to get too close to a big tree, we're talking one that's about a foot wide or more, you're probably going to need a special permit for that. If you ignore this, you could be looking at some hefty fines and serious delays. Okay, so I know that sounds like a lot of hurdles, but don't get discouraged. There's absolutely a clear path to getting this done right and having a flawless project. So let's talk about how you can dodge all these comment or rejection pitfalls. Here's your simple 4-step checklist for success. Number 1, go talk to your HOA early, like before you fall in love with a design. Number 2, find out exactly what your setbacks and permit requirements are. Number 3, double check your plans for any protected trees. And number 4, and honestly, this is the one that makes everything else a breeze, hire a licensed contractor who knows what they're doing. And that last point brings up a really good question, right? You're ready to build, you're excited to start enjoying that Florida lifestyle, but are you really ready for the mountain of paperwork, the endless phone calls, and all the forms you have to submit? It's a lot. Honestly, the smartest move for most people is to just let an expert handle the whole thing. A really good licensed contractor, they don't just show up and build, they manage the entire complicated approval process for you, from the very beginning to the very end. So what does that actually mean for you? It means you can just hand off all that bureaucratic headache. They're the ones filling out those super detailed HOA forms. They're the ones making sure every line on the plan is compliant with the city code. They're the ones talking to the HOA board and submitting all the permits. Basically, they let you focus on the fun part, the dream, while they handle all the paperwork. All right, let's wrap this up with a quick summary of the key things you need to remember. Think of this as your final cheat sheet to make sure your project goes smoothly. So, getting that green light really boils down to this. For the HOA, it's all about style. Nail the color, nail the design, and be extra careful if you're in a historic district. For the city, it's all about the code. Know your setbacks, build on a proper permitted foundation, and don't forget the trees. And the secret weapon that ties it all together? Getting a pro to guide you through the whole maze. When you successfully navigate both of those worlds, the HOA and the city, that's when you end up with a gorgeous, safe, and valuable addition to your home. Yeah, it's a tricky process, but it's a process we've absolutely mastered. Here at Screen Factory Florida, we've been doing this for over 15 years. We've helped thousands of homeowners just like you get the exact enclosure they dreamed of, without all the usual headaches. We literally handle the whole shebang, from finding that perfect custom color to managing every single permit, all the way through the final professional installation. We make sure your project is safe, totally compliant, and of course, beautiful. So if you're ready to make your vision a reality and you want to do it without getting tangled up in all that red tape, just get in touch with us for a free estimate. All the info you need is right below.